All right, the author of that piece joins us now. Luke Thomas, one half of the Morning Combat team here on CBS Sports HQ. Luke, this really seems like a fight that could go either way, given the doubts about Sterling and then the 3-year layoff for Cejudo. Cejudo's the slight favorite. What type of a fight are you expecting between these two?
I think you're right. I mean, the odds kind of speak to the fact that Henry might be a slight favorite, but just that. It's a really close contest. I'm expecting a very tactical battle between the two of them. Now, again, it's hard to say exactly what Henry Cejudo is going to do. He's got an opponent who has height advantage on him, who has a reach advantage on him, and I'm not going to say a grappling advantage, but in certain forms of grappling, a huge advantage, namely the back. Plus, he's a really rangy striker anyway with both kicks and jabs. So it's an interesting tactical battle about Henry Cejudo having to get to the inside. Can he do that? Where he is definitely the better power puncher. And of course, he's got those incredible wrestling credentials, but he doesn't really go for them that. I mean, yes, he averages about 2 per 15 minutes, but in his last 3 fights, he won all of them by TKO. So he's kind of like molded himself into more of a striker who has wrestling in his back pocket when he needs it. Will that change here? What's it going to look like? I simply don't know. Like the rest of you, it's been off for 3 years. How has that changed his style? How has that changed his approach? I'm expecting a pitched, close battle, probably going the distance here.
Well, and it's going to be interesting, too, because if Sterling does come out on top, I mean, you mentioned in the piece that there are some doubts about him. Maybe some of those doubts will be cleared up if he manages to come out on top of this one versus Cejudo. The co-main event here features number 4 ranked welterweight Belal Muhammad against number 5 ranked Gilbert Burns. Burns, another case here, slight favorite at -125. And he's getting used to fighting this year. 2023 is all about him so far.
That's right. He fought at UFC 287, which was the last pay-per-view. He looked good against Jorge Masvidal there. Didn't get the finish I think he was looking for, but Jorge Masvidal, traditionally a very difficult guy to put away. Not many have done it, but he got the job done. He was better basically everywhere. And listen, he's trying to strike while the iron is hot. I mean that in 2 ways. One, his weight is down by virtue of the proximity between these last 2 UFC events. So that makes getting into the kind of shape he needs to be for this particular moment a little bit easier to come by, right? Doesn't have to do as much road work. And the other part is he's, I think, 36 years of age. Folks, clock is ticking on this one. And there's a stat, it's relevant to both this fight and the last one. If you look at the record of fighters above the age of 35, between 125 and 170 pounds, this fight will take place at 170 in UFC title fights. Their record is 2-28. 2-28. The chances are not great to win a title as you age. Is extremely unforgiving, 170 pounds and down. But as I mentioned, he's looking strong and looking to capitalize. He's got a lot of advantages in this fight, but Belal Muhammad also surging into this position. To me, the question is going to be who can win with the wrestling, because I think Gilbert Burns is going to be a little bit sharper on the feet, but a guy like Belal Muhammad can tie you up, make you work for it. And yes, we know that a guy like Gilbert Burns has good submissions, obviously has pretty good wrestling as well, but Belal Muhammad not to be trifled with. So really, the key question here is going to be who can differentiate on those aforementioned levels.
A 5 versus 4 matchup with the 4 seed at +105, the 5 seed the favorite, Burns at -125. Yan Xiaonan faces Jessica Andrade in a women's strawweight bout. What are you expecting from the Brazilian pile driver in this one?
Yeah, destruction, probably in all likelihood. MMA is crazy. I guess we'll see. I mean, here's the deal. Yan Xiaonan has absolutely earned this position. You just have to give it to her. She had a bit of a tough fight when she looked good and ultimately against Mackenzie Dern, really getting to this position the hard way. And Jessica Andrade has kind of bounced around. One time in her career, she was at bantamweight. Then she goes to strawweight, then tried her hand at flyweight, took a fight against Erin Blanchfield at 125 on short notice, and lost that one. Something of a surprise, depending on your perspective. Definitely a bit of a breaking out party for Erin Blanchfield, but now she's back at 115. She had a full camp for this, and she is just one of the strongest UFC athletes pound for pound, obviously men or women. And of course she has, you can see it right there with the highlights, dynamite punching power even at 115 pounds. Yan Xiaonan is a volume striker, which means she's going to be in the pocket to be hit a fair number of times. Could she get it done? Absolutely. I don't want to look past that. But you have to have some kind of an answer for the physical strength and the punching power of one of the very top female fighters in the world. good luck. She's going to need it.
Yeah, and you see that power reflected in the odds there. Andrade's the favorite at -195. Always some good fights on the main card and on the preliminary card. Give us a fight to watch from the prelims.
Yeah, here's one you should definitely keep your eye on. Phil Hawes, which was this guy who was a really hyped prospect who fell on hard times but has managed to turn things around at least a little bit in this stage in his career. Just looks like what we say in fight sports, looks great getting off the bus, right? Hugely muscular. You'd be like, wow, I don't want to fight that guy. But he's taken on someone who is just not to be trifled with. Remember this name, Ikram Aliskerov. And I know a lot of folks might not be able to remember that because, names get a little bit different from different parts of the world. Here is what this guy's claim to fame is, right? He has 2 wins from Combat Sambo in the World Championships over Bellator champion Yaroslav Amosov, which is very, very difficult to do. And he gave Khamzat Chimaev on the regional scene everything he could handle. Now, cards on the table, he did get knocked out in that fight, but I bring it up to say he's a Combat Sambo world champion, and he stuffed all of Chimaev's takedowns with relative ease in that fight. He had a Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series fight to get into the UFC and absolutely blew past his competition inside of a round. So this is his full-on UFC debut. I don't know if he can become a champion, but if you're asking me for guys who are making their UFC debut, who would you circle and say has, let's say, championship potential? It is Ikram Aliskerov. Pay attention to him.
Aliskerov -185 in terms of the odds coming into that fight. Lastly, from the octagon to the squared circle, Canelo Alvarez defending his middleweight belt. He is a heavy favorite in this one, -2,000 as he returns to his home country for the first time in over a decade. How does John Ryder stay in this one and pull off an upset?
I don't know. Yeah. I get paid to tell you the answer, and I don't really have a good one. Listen, here's what I'll say. For folks who are wondering how this bout came to be, it is a mandatory bout, right? So he is required by the sanctioning body, in this case, to defend the title, and he defends them. He's not one of these guys who wins the belt and then doesn't do the mandatory and then just drops it. He actually wants to keep the belt at 168, so he is defending it, and I give him credit for it. And it should be noted, Ryder really earned this position in a weird way. A lot of folks inside boxing kind of say he should have had it in 2020 when he deserved to get a win over Callum Smith and didn't, but okay, all's well that ends well. This fight is going to be, for the first time in 11 years, Canelo Alvarez is back in Mexico, in his hometown of Guadalajara. So, John Ryder's up against 60, 70,000 screaming Canelo fans. Obviously, I'm not saying that the officiating crew is going to give Canelo Alvarez all of the benefits, but we know how these things tend to go in certain cases. Here's the one thing you do want to pay attention to that is an interesting part of this storyline. Canelo Alvarez had a great 2021 Fighter of the Year, unified 168, was the weight class champion for all 4 sanctioning bodies. But then in 2022, did not have a great year. He got kind of, beat up a little bit by Bivol. Certainly Bivol was better up at 175. But then even the Triple G trilogy, he didn't look great. He won that contest, but it wasn't really a resounding victory. I should tell the audience there is at least some suspicion inside the boxing world. No one knows for sure, but there is some suspicion maybe Canelo Alvarez is finally on the decline. Remember, he made his pro debut at the age of 15. He's been doing this a long time, so even though he's 32, he's got a lot of miles on him. Ryder should lose no matter what, but I will say this, if it's close, if it's competitive, yeah, that might mean there's some troubling signs for Canelo Alvarez ahead. I guess we'll see on Saturday.
Well, as we said, -2,000 going into that fight. Heavy, heavy favorite. He is CBS Sports combat expert Luke Thomas discussing UFC 288 and Canelo Ryder on Saturday night. Great to see you, Luke. Great stuff as always. Enjoy the fights. For more from Luke, be sure to check out the Morning Combat podcast that he does alongside Brian Campbell. You can download and follow Morning Combat wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch the fellas on YouTube.